Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Maximize the Benefits of Medical Device Onshoring. I'm Amanda Hosey, your moderator for this 30-minute program, which focuses on the advantages of contract manufacturing organizations. Our speaker today is Mike Harris, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Flexan. If you have questions for our speaker, please send them through the Ask a Question box, and we'll address as many as possible at the end of the event. Also note that a PDF of today's slides may be downloaded under the Event Resources tab on your screen. Now, on to the presentation. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Amanda, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. My name is Mike Harris, and I'm pleased to present an overview of the view of onshoring manufacturing to North America. So today I'll cover just what are the trends driving onshoring and regional manufacturing centers, especially in medical device for contract manufacturers. What are the benefits of onshoring to North America? And how are CMOs aiding their customers to onshore faster and alleviate the brick and mortar investment? And I'll share a little bit about what Flexan is doing to support these initiatives. So a little bit about the current trends and situation. Like any situation, there's some history behind moving and the globalization of manufacturing, especially in medical device and as well as other industries. I am not a global economist. However, we've all experienced some trends in the last decade that we've seen before and some we haven't seen before. Just going back to the 1970s or even before that in the post-World War II era, you started to see some of the globalization of manufacturing as the economy grew, as the onset of new technology and computers and microchips. You started to see industries move manufacturing globally. In the 70s, a lot of this was driven by tax empowerment zones outside the U.S. You saw the migration in the 1980s of moving manufacturing globally. You had the onset of the Cold War and the post-Cold War, where you saw more globalization and emerging manufacturing centers in China and Vietnam, where you're starting to see other technologies and capabilities emerge in those markets. And then you started to see, and especially in the med device world, in the post-2000 era, you started to see a lot of the regulatory standards change, and you started to see the migration of product launches and development outside the U.S. first. So a lot of trends and factors that have impact, especially with medical device manufacturing over the last 3 or 4 decades, that really drive the strategies and really drive the outcomes of how manufacturing is conducted today. So a little bit about the last decade, from 2010 to 2020. There's a lot of changes that we've seen in terms of manufacturing. A lot of the complex, more heavily IP-driven manufacturing processes, you started to see those move more onshore. You started to see the need for increased productivity. You saw some of the globalization of the R&D operations and being more aligned. Obviously, a lot of automation and automation was developed. Improved quality and reducing the regulatory spend. And then you saw an increase in labor costs in the U.S. So a lot of different elements in the last decade and up and through 2020, as we all know what has been the impact of the global pandemic. So which gets to today's discussion is the pendulum event. A lot of economic trends swing back and forth, and we're starting to see that trend today, post-pandemic. I think it started a little bit before the pandemic, but we're starting to see manufacturing and med device start to move back to the North American continent. Certainly the rising cost and the complexity of logistics, shipping and freight, increased tariffs, increased supply chain interruptions, which has been really crippling to the medical device industry. inconsistent quality, and then geopolitical instability. And then we're also seeing a change in the regulatory complexities around the world. When you look at Europe and the EU market and the medical device regulation change, where it's now requiring clinical trials instead of self-declaration, that's changing the access to that market, where it's actually faster to come to market in the US. So again, a lot of pendulums switching back to North America, and it'll be interesting to see how the next few years pan out from that perspective. Just to give you a little stats, this is just general manufacturing. The 21% of the North American firms have surveyed a portion of the production will leave a low-cost country and return back to the U.S. Many factors affecting that, as I just mentioned, but there's also time zone travel and some of the challenges to getting to some of the countries, especially during the pandemic, which made it very difficult to bring the organizations together. But you're starting to see that trend from a commodity standpoint and a plastics perspective, because that's near and dear to Flexan's heart. We spend a lot of time in the polymer space in terms of contract manufacturing for both thermoplastics as well as silicones. We're seeing a lot of that plastic production moving back to the U.S., especially to meet the demands of the supply chain crisis. In addition to onshoring, part of the challenge with onshoring, when you're leaving a lower cost labor market and coming back onshore, that changes your cost basis. So a significant investment will be made on automation or automation. We're seeing this not only in the U.S., but we're also seeing that in Europe. Countries like Germany are investing pretty heavily in manufacturing operations. And this allows them to reconfigure manufacturing lines that require less labor. It eases the deployment and the reliability in terms of keeping a strong labor market and team. It's less intrusive, and then it's shown over time it could be a better cost-benefit ratio because of the longevity in which you're going to get out of automation. So another trend that we're seeing as part of the onshoring efforts. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what are the key elements of onshoring and what are the key drivers and benefits. So when we say onshoring, and this is a unique term, you've heard nearshoring, and onshoring could be to the continental U.S. or it could be to onshoring to North America. And we'll talk a little bit about manufacturing in Mexico. And we've seen that over the years, especially in a lot of different consumer products industries, automotive, and we've seen the emergence of medical over the last decade, where you have manufacturing in Mexico and then support organizations just over the border. And certainly companies are taking advantage of higher labor content manufacturing, where the hourly rates are lower. But they also have a very strong professional talent in terms of engineering, operations, finance. So you're seeing a really nice blend of organizations where you have your really good talent located in country, as well as the lower cost labor for the more manual manufacturing processes. And that the other aspect, especially when it comes to medical devices, standardizing manufacturing processes, quality systems, and supporting new product development. It's not just a plant for manufacturing. We're starting to see the capabilities of developing new products from within those centers. So if most everyone has probably heard of maquiladoras, this really came out of a little bit of the NAFTA agreement, but these are manufacturing sites that are approved by the Mexican government. They have been known for low-cost manufacturing. They're typically located on the border, and there's various capabilities in terms of the work that's done in Mexico and transferred over the border in tax-free zones, and it allows companies all sizes to really capitalize on that unique situation. So the maquiladora is really the entree for all the U.S. companies to start manufacturing in some of these centers. So I'll shift a little bit from a contract manufacturing organization. So all of our customers are, original equipment manufacturers for products in the medical device world. Some of the benefits that you're going to see as you work with the CMO, in the areas reducing landing costs. We're seeing, the cost of freight from Asia is pretty significant. The time we've seen the challenges of getting freight in through the harbors, and it's really impacted not only supply chain, but finished product. You have an increase of working capital by having the value of that inventory in the ocean. One of the things that we're doing is leveraging center of excellence, as we have key R&D centers and development centers in the U.S. to work with our teams in Mexico, especially as I mentioned, bringing up new products, engineering, and also looking at the quality management system. This definitely changes the risk profile that's happening in Asia from a geopolitical instability. It should eliminate the risks of tariffs that we're seeing out of China. We also see the benefit of providing redundant manufacturing capabilities. So we not only would have a manufacturing line in Mexico, but we can also have that same line at one of our U.S. centers. And then a lot of the higher labor content manufacturing elements, we move down to Mexico just because it drives a lot of the cost out. So very positive results from what we're doing as a contract manufacturer to move that manufacturing to Mexico. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about what is Flexan doing and our plans going forward. So as the picture will show you, we have a sister division called LLC Dover. This is their plant in Mexico, and we are in the process of building out a Class 7 clean room that will be fully operational in the Q3 of this year. And we're pretty excited about this endeavor. So why did we choose the El Paso, Juarez region? A lot of the demand for products that we manufacture is really aligned with the capabilities based in Juarez of existing companies, both OEMs as well as contract manufacturers. And that allows us to recruit the right direct labor, the right professional talent to allow us to really grow our business and offer our current customers opportunities to move some of the manufacturing out of Asia to Mexico. So we have an ongoing project that just started to support that. But as you can see from a product and market product standpoint, a lot of these products that go into these segments, we already manufacture today, whether it be in the U.S. or in Asia. So it made a lot of sense for us, and it certainly helped that our sister company had an existing 100,000 square foot building there. So we are moving into that facility and building out our clean room. The other aspect of it is from a capability standpoint in terms of having that professional experience and the direct labor experience on manufacturing finished devices, supporting kitting operations, do assembly work, molding, and extrusion, and both polymers, both in thermoplastic and silicone. I think that makes it very attractive for us to the extent that it'll make this very turnkey. So it's not a total complete greenfield. We're going to be able to leverage a lot of the natural talent that's existing and experience that's existing in Juarez. So when it comes to our experience in terms of build outs, we've had a lot of experience of this at Flexan. We have a facility in Suzhou, China that we opened in 2004 that does have a Class 7 clean room, and we do conduct full medical device assembly and kitting and it's FDA registered. So from an organization, we're very experienced with manufacturing transfers, whether it be to a site in the US or moving manufacturing to China. But even within moving manufacturing to Mexico, we have had a long-standing partner for over 25 years, where we would develop the manufacturing process at our Center of Excellence in Salt Lake City. And once that manufacturing line has been stabilized, we would then support our customer and they would transfer it to their facility in Mexico. This process went on for over 15 years, and to the tune of maybe $3 to $4 million or 3 to 4 million units of finished devices that were produced in over 25 different codes. So a very successful experience from our organization to move things to Mexico to help them stabilize. And it was a really good model because we had a constant churn of new product development that would refill the pipeline from a manufacturing. So it was a great experience. Manufacturing transfers are really in Flexan's DNA. Okay, so I'd like to share just a brief manufacturing transfer case study because it really touches on a lot of things that we're discussing today. What were the challenges of manufacturing transfer, whether it be to Mexico, to Costa Rica, could be the Caribbean, or it could be to Suzhou. So a lot of experience from our perspective on what makes a really good manufacturing transfer, and a lot of learning, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And that partnership that you form with your customer is absolutely critical, from the top level to the direct labor standpoint. You really have to understand the objective and really set the expectations. So I just want to share just a brief story on an example. We had a top 50 OEM come to us that wanted a second source for manufacturing, and it's a complete medical device and assembly and packaging, and we wanted to move this to our Suzhou, China facility. So this is a pretty complex product. It involves molding and extrusion and assembly and building out a packaging line over 2 shifts, over 25 individual components, and a number of source components, and then a minimum of 25 main assembly steps. So this is a complex device. The packaging and kitting was pretty straightforward, but as we looked at building out the line in China, this was something new for us. Our facility in China up to that point was really just mold and ship of components. So adding medical device assembly and packaging was something new for the team there. So our solution was something that we follow pretty religiously, and we're disciplined to project management and being nimble. As everyone, I'm sure, on the phone has experienced, that once you set a project plan, it will change, and you have to be prepared for the unexpected. And we've seen that across the globe. And as we started this project, we were then faced with the global pandemic. So as you can imagine, it was pretty disruptive in terms of how we were going to develop a lot of the engineering solutions in the United States and transfer that to Suzhou so they could bring up the manufacturing line. We were working with the customer across 7 different time zones, and we were completely prohibited to travel. And we were able to successfully bring up this manufacturing line in under 14 months, all virtually and at all hours of the night. And it's been a heck of a success story for us. We actually doubled our output in the first 7 months in terms of reaching our goals. So it was a huge success story for both organizations, and a lot of lessons learned. And this really comes back to really how you manage manufacturing transfers, what's the benefit of those transfers and being prepared. Because the pendulum will shift, and you can't be complacent. It's good to be lean, but you can't be complacent, and you have to think through and problem solve on what to expect. And we're going through that process right now and are building out our Mexico facility. And we're really excited because bringing this opportunity closer to our manufacturing centers of excellence, I think, is a great opportunity for us to support our customers, to help them mitigate the risk, drive out costs, and really stabilize their manufacturing. And just because we're onshoring doesn't mean we're ignoring the rest of the globe. Flexan's strategy has been to build regional centers of excellence for manufacturing, supported by key engineering centers here in the U.S., standardizing our quality management system across all of our sites, as well as our new product development process. And all of that learning and project management is standardized globally. So it allows our international, multinational customers to have regional products and regional development, as well as a global presence. So we feel if we implement this allows us to move faster and reduce risk. And our onshoring strategy is pretty key in building out our site in Mexico. So we are really excited about the aspects that this will bring and the future. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone's time, and I hope you found this informative, at least giving an idea of as how we see the trends and some of the opportunities that we work with our customers to move manufacturing and have that nimbleness, because the unexpected will happen. If we've learned anything over the last 3 years, the unexpected will happen, and it's just being prepared and having a strategy to support that. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, and I look forward to answering some questions. And Amanda, I will pass it on to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike, for that informative presentation. Just a reminder to the audience, you can still submit questions for our speaker through the Ask a Question box on your screen. Now we're going to go ahead and take some questions that have already come in. First up, Mike, someone asks, you touched on the fact that in some cases, automation in the U.S. can be more cost-effective than manufacturing in Mexico. Can you expand on the cases and reasons for this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. If there's an opportunity to invest in automation, and it's all relative, it's a heavier capital investment into manufacturing, but as I mentioned, it has some inherent benefits in terms of consistency, the consistency of managing your labor force. It's going to reduce the amount of labor required, and you're going to have more skilled labor, but you won't have to worry about what happened post-pandemic was labor shortages in the U.S., especially if it's something that you can automate. There are some manufacturing processes that are just still going to continue to be manual. And so there we look to automate. So if there's a manual step in the manufacturing process that you can automate or implement something that makes it more efficient, that's certainly beneficial. So it's what I've seen, it depends. Some things that we do, the investment and return on investment to automate something, the ROI isn't there, but there's certainly products and processes that you can make that investment. And we're starting to see that as well. So it's a good balance.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Mike. Someone asks, can you give us an idea of what the cost differential would be if we moved from Asia to North America?
And speaking to the U.S., certainly continental U.S., it's going to be, it's typically 3x higher from a labor perspective. But to North America, to low-cost country manufacturing in Mexico, we're seeing Mexico change just a slightly higher than China, but there's been a decade-long labor inflation rate in China that's outpacing Mexico. So I think it's going to be pretty comparable to the Asia market. Now within Asia, you have many different areas. Vietnam is going to be a little bit less than Malaysia and China. So it's going to be, and Taiwan is an expensive labor market. So you have to look at it country by country, but it's going to be pretty close when we look at low-cost country in Mexico.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Mike. Next up, how long does it take to build out medical device manufacturing sites?
I can tell you it's, when we look at building out the clean room and getting the site readiness, it's a little under a year. And the infrastructure and organization, you could do that in 6 months, and then you're working through your project timelines in terms of full validation, equipment, timing. But we broke ground in early or late February, and we expect ISO certification sometime in Q3. So now we had the benefit of our sister company starting to build their clean room, so we're using the same contractor. So you could do it in about a year, I think, end to end. We will probably beat that timeline.
All right, thanks. Next up, someone asks, is Flexan automating processes in Mexico?
We will. From a molding perspective, we'll have some automated molding, higher volume molding capabilities. But we are taking advantage of things that aren't cost effective to invest in automation, kit packing and some of the assembly work. So it'll be a blend. Right now, our customer needs tend to be more labor intensive, so we're taking advantage of the lower cost labor. But as we expand automation, that allows you to not only leverage it in North America within continental U.S. or Mexico.
All right, thank you. Next question, how long does it take to build out medical device manufacturing sites?
Typically, I think this is kind of similar to the previous question. I think we can do it in 12 months or under 12 months. A lot of that today comes back to just raw material supplies and building contractors and timing. And then you have the certification, especially when you're dealing with a Class 7 clean room versus a Class 8. The requirements are a little more stringent in terms of airflow and particulate and ensuring that you're operating within that environment and making sure that you have the right amount of negative pressure. So it can be done under a year, and depending on the size of the clean room.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Mike. Well, with that, we have reached the end of our webinar. I would like to thank both Mike Harris and our audience for joining us today, and thank you to all of you who submitted questions. We'll supply Mike with any we didn't get to so he can follow up offline. As a reminder, you may download a PDF of today's slides under the Event Resources tab on your screen. In just a moment, a survey will pop up. Please tell us what you thought of this program by answering these 3 questions. This webinar will be available on demand, and an email will be sent to everyone who registered as soon as the archive is ready. Once again, thank you all for watching.